Broadcasting live from the SiriusXM studio in California, this is Volume West, covering everything happening in the world of music with your host, Yahoo Music Editor, Lyndsey Parker.
Welcome to Volume West from home. Coming back to the show, a previous guest that I'm very excited to speak with again is singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, also known as Plural One, but you may know him as Josh Klinghoffer. Josh, it is good to see you again.
Yes, likewise. Good to see you too.
It's very different circumstances when you were on the show last. We were not doing Volume West from home. It was just Volume West from the studio. It was, I'm going to say, in like January or February, around that time. I remember it was right after the Super Bowl because we were talking about the Super Bowl quote-unquote controversy and stuff. But at that time, it was a very different world. It was only a few months ago. Kind of feels like a lifetime ago. It was when you were promoting your first album under the Plural One name, To Be One With You, and you were getting ready to go out on tour with Pearl Jam. And Pearl Jam, if I'm not mistaken, ended up being one of the first, if not the first act to like see what was coming down the pike with COVID-19 and you know, take the precautions to cancel the tour. That was like the first major act that canceled the tour.
I think it was. They were. Yeah.
So a lot has changed since then. And you also have a new album out. So it seems like you've been very busy during lockdown or whatever you want to call it. But how are you doing? Like, you know, with all this stuff that's going on?
I'm doing very well. You know, I have to watch what I say when I answer that question because I know that the world is sort of evaporating in front of our eyes, and there's a lot of pain out there. But for me, on my, you know, in my own little world, I feel like I've been sort of going and not really taking much of time off for 20 years or so. So again, never forgetting that there's a lot of suffering and misery all around us. But I've been able to sort of relax and just work and focus on, you know, I've read 15 books. I don't think I've, you know, everything that I've wanted to sort of catch up on and just kind of have a life where I wasn't always sort of running out of, even when I'm sort of off from work in the past, when the world is functioning, I'm sort of doing things all the time. There's always plans. There's always this. So this has been a real focused time for me where I've been able to work a lot, hence a new album. So.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that you're doing well because I think we actually, when the Pearl Jam tour got canceled, I think we texted a bit then because I remember how, you know, excited you were for it. I know you're like a huge Pearl Jam fan, and it was a great opportunity for you. You know, you hadn't been out of the Chili Peppers for that long, and then this awesome new opportunity to go back on the road with your own music presented itself. So like at that time, like when all that shit was going down, were you initially freaking out, and then like how did you then refocus and then go into making this album, the new album, which sorry, what is the album called? I don't have it.
It's called I Don't Feel Well.
Yeah, it's called I Don't Feel Well. So like when I hear that title, I don't necessarily think, you know, you're in a good place. So I'm happy you're in a good place. But where was your mind at back in March, I guess?
Well, I think in March when this was all starting, again, like you said, because Pearl Jam was sort of on the forefront of seeing what was in front of us all and sort of taking a very bold and responsible step to, you know, postpone or cancel their tour as it was booked at the moment. And just kind of because it was all happening in Seattle and they were surrounded by what a lot of people hadn't seen yet. And their kids' schools were already in question before most of the country even had heard of what was going on. So, you know, I remember it so vividly because I was up there and I was rehearsing and I was going to leave with them and the tour was going to start. I mean, I think less than a week from when the decision was made. And even in the 24 hours that it took them to release the statement once the decision had been made, there were developments. And you could tell by the wording of the statement they released that it was such a painful decision to make, you know, not to mention because everyone in their band was really excited about playing this new music they had put out. But everything was changing on a daily basis. And it was an amazing thing to watch because by the time I drove home from Seattle, the world was completely different. I was driving, I just crossed the California border just above Mount Shasta when the NBA canceled. And then 30 minutes later, we heard about Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson. So I was just driving. It was beautiful afternoon, and I was just thinking, wow, the world is just it's just a different place minute by minute. And, you know, it was oddly serene because I guess, you know, the word was out that there was something going on.
I know exactly what day you're talking about. It was a Wednesday. And I'll explain to you why, but finish your thought.
Yeah, no, well, I just, you know, so, I mean, for me, on a personal level, there was no room, and the thought of being freaked out or personally afraid of what was happening in my life couldn't have been further from my mind, because the world and the country and, you know, specifically the people I was around up in Seattle with their families and keeping everyone safe. I mean, there was so many more important things. And I already had, you know, I'm not really interested in myself beyond that. You know, the world will, you know, tours will happen when they happen, and I'll you know, I'll get to play music when I do. I mean, there were so many more things to pressing things to consider at that point.
Course,
but I think the world was a different place when I got home.
Yeah, I remember all of that in real time, just, you know, doing this show. Of course, like every day we were reporting, like, South by Southwest is getting canceled, Pearl Jam's tour is getting canceled, Green Day have canceled dates, there's rumors that Coachella is going to be moved. Like, it was happening real time. And I know exactly the day you're talking about. It was March 11th. I know this for a couple of reasons. That was the last time I ever had a studio guest on this show. It was Alice Bagg. And I remember we, like, made a, you know, I know her enough to greet her with a hug. And I remember as she came in, like, we made a joke, like, oh, should we hug? You know, is it safe?
It's probably the last hug you've had.
My last hug was actually Michael DeBar, who co-hosted the last show I ever did on in the studio for now, of course. Yeah, those are good last hugs to have. But then when we took our photo at the Step and Repeat, Alice Bagg and myself, we sort of jokingly bumped elbows, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't put our arms around each other. Let's do, like, the elbow thing. And within, like, an hour, I was like, don't post that photo. Because we were, like, laughing in the photo, like, joking around about how we couldn't touch. And by, like, an hour later, I was like, okay, we can't post this because now it's because all the stuff you had. I remember that night. That was the night of the Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson news. It was the night of Donald Trump, one of the travel ban he did. And then also that night on The Masked Singer, Sarah Palin was revealed as the bear. Oh, and she had sung Sir Mix-a-Lot, Baby Got Back. I remember there was this article in Esquire that said, I thought the apocalypse would be classier. That was the title. Because all that happened on the same night, like Sarah Palin on The Masked Singer, all this stuff going down. And yeah, you're right. The world, that week, that was the week everything started to get canceled and people started to really take things seriously. And it's been a crazy time ever since. It would have been nice to do this interview in person, but I'm glad that we're able to do on Zoom. And I'm glad I want to pivot. It's a word we use in the industry a lot these days, pivot to you talking about I don't feel well. Because is it my understanding that you made this entire record since then, since you were last on the show, while you were in isolation, I guess?
Yeah. I got home, you know, it was March 12th when I pulled into the driveway, and, you know, suddenly back then, remember how back then you didn't really leave, you didn't open the door. You know, you washed everything that came to the door. You washed all your groceries, everything. It was so tense. And I kind of just said, all right, well, all the stuff that I've wanted to do around the house, all the bits that I need to organize, I'm just going to do all, you know, it's years of piles and things that I needed to get to. And so about 3 weeks of that, really dedicated cleaning and organizing. The minute that was done, I just started writing and playing, and I had this burst where like in a week I had a couple of brand new things, and it just, you know, it was so incongruous because the world was crumbling, but I was feeling this really centered sort, you know, just I'm sure you can understand if you live here, there's something to do all the time. There's always plans everywhere you go. There's stimulus, and this was just, you know, calm and, you know, reading and practicing and playing and writing. So yeah, before too long, I had a bunch of new songs, and yeah, I mean, I just kind of, at a certain point, I started making a song or a demo a day, even if it wasn't a written song, it would be an instrumental, and just start, you know, texting with people about that and kind of playing off their version of that and different people that I know being creative in this time. And, you know, it was sort of we couldn't control what was going on. So the best thing you could do was, stay content and be positive. And for some people, that's making music and writing songs. So before too long, I had enough to make an album. And I guess it was enough time to where the guy I work with and I said, you ready to go? Are you having people in? And we were very careful at first, and testing became easier. And before too long, there was a record done.
Oh, so you didn't record this at home. You recorded it in a responsible way in a studio. Yeah.
I don't know how to record myself beyond a little cassette 8-track machine. So I did the whole album basically on that demo style, which made the recording easier, because usually the thing that I'm most proud of or just most happy about with this new album is that I've never, just because of life and other things going on, never written songs, recorded them, and then released them in one successive period. So this time, and because I was able to focus and make demos of everything, it just went pretty quickly, and it was focused.
So why is the title I Don't Feel Well? If you were... obviously, none of us are feeling 100% right now, but it sounds like you were in, at least compared to a lot of people these days, in a fairly contented place, like
perhaps that speaks to it. Is I don't feel well. I don't feel the way I probably should be feeling, because I felt great, and I was.
Did you feel guilty about that? Like you should feel worse?
At times. Not that I should feel worse. No, I just, the whole time at the beginning, it was, people were, how's it going? Are you okay? And I was like, yeah. And also, it felt good to constantly, day after day, remind myself how lucky I am and how grateful I am for the experience I had with the band, particularly that allows me to not worry about my income at the moment and worry about the things that a lot of people have to deal with. So, that never was far from my mind. And but at the same time, I felt like this period could really show people a lot. And if, probably one of the scariest things for people is to sit still and look at themselves or look at their surroundings and look at their lives and look at the people around them and look at their relationships. And I'm sure that led to a lot of discomfort and turmoil. But for me, that's the kind of thing I like to do. I try and, I went from therapy once a week to twice a week, and I was able to really sort of, I guess I can't illustrate enough how, and that's one of my biggest problems is in normal life. It's just 1,000 miles an hour. There's plans every night. There's, it's hard to slow down. I do it to myself. I make those plans. I want to see those people. I want to connect. I want to see that sporting event. I want to see that movie, whatever it is. Or I want to go get that coffee and not work on the song that I'm having trouble with, or whatever it is. It's hard to sit there and, be still and think about the stuff you want to communicate. So, I could go get a coffee and, I'm always running away from the things that I should probably be doing. So this was a moment where that wasn't on, I wasn't able to do that, and it felt great. And, the I don't feel well title, I think obviously because of how everyone's feeling and the fact that people are feeling a way that they haven't before on a global scale. For me, I think based on everything I just said, I've been able to really look at the way I feel things and the way I process emotions. And, I can really do a good job at just not dealing with those. And when people say, well, I feel like this, and my instinct is to laugh. And I go, what? You just got to keep doing whatever you're doing. And, it's my inability to slow down and really be one with what's actually going on inside, or, again, it's hard for me to even admit that there are such things as feelings. So a lot of the time. So that's where the title comes from, even though it'd probably be easier for people to think it's just because I am sick.
See, that's interesting, because when I heard the title, my first impression was that it was that you weren't emotionally well, you weren't mentally well. So I am glad to hear that that is not the case and that you are doing well during this time and that you're being especially creative. We do need to take a break, but I would love to continue this conversation with you, Josh. So we'll be right back with Volume West from Home.
Broadcasting live from SiriusXM studios in Los Angeles, California. This is Volume West with your host, Yahoo music editor, Lyndsey Parker.
Welcome back to Volume West from Home. I am once again joined by Plural One, a.k.a. Josh Klinghoffer. We're talking about the new Plural One album, I Don't Feel Well. Before the break, we were getting into the meaning of the record and how it was made during these crazy times we're in. They're very crazy times indeed. And you have been very busy during this time working on recorded music, but I imagine this time has been a huge lifestyle change for you because both solo and with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, you were used to touring pretty much all the time, nonstop. So how have you adjusted to this concert-free world we live in right now?
Yeah, I don't really miss that at all. I mean, time moves in such funny ways nowadays. And, and when you're touring, a year can disappear like that. And it's done that now, or this last year has sort of disappeared, but I've been standing still. So I like the notion of going from one place to another so quickly and so rapidly kind of sounds scary to me. But, I miss playing music live on stage with people, and especially in the context of that band, for the amount of people that you can reach and the amount of just the size of the sound you're making. I mean, that'll always be something that I want to do or that I miss or that there was, unless I was, sick and playing terribly or something, I enjoyed every minute of doing that. So I always miss that. I mean, I would do that any time of day, but I don't miss the constant movement and the I never have a problem with loneliness or any of that on tour, because I enjoy that. But yeah, just the pace of it and the unpacking and all that. No, I don't miss that at all. I think, we at one point during this, I think there was also I'm trying to think back, there was a hope or feeling of hopefulness that, oh my gosh, this will bring people together. This will teach us something about who we are as a country or as a species. We will figure out that all this shit. Can I say that?
Yep. Go right ahead. All the shit I already did. I already said that word earlier, so I grant you permission.
I know this. I don't know why. But all the shit that we spend our time bickering about is so meaningless and asinine. And then we failed. So
yeah, totally.
A period of feeling like, well, it sucks out there, but surely this will.
We're all in this together.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way we can fuck this up, and we did, and we are still, and we are. Yeah. We're making fools of ourselves. Speaking as a country on a level that's just. And shocking.
I do recall, I totally agree with you. I do recall that as all this stuff was going down, going back to what we were talking about, March, April, maybe through May, I was getting sort of a weird deja vu to the days after 9/11 where people really, in the face of a big national tragedy, were coming together and like taking care of each other. And, there were a lot of like benefit concerts and a lot of live streams and a lot of like just all the commercials on TV were nice about how we're like all in this together and helping each other out. And everything felt like, oh, we're going to get through this. And then somehow the coronavirus and mask wearing and all those sort of things got politicized. I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't know if I'll ever be able to figure that out. But yeah, around that time in 9/11, to use that example, it seems like people put their differences aside because we were all going through this big traumatic thing. But like something, I don't know if it's because of social media that I don't know what it is.
Well, I think maybe I'm being simplistic here, but you could point a big finger toward the maniac at the top for this one. I mean, just the way the messaging was. I feel like when 9/11 happened, the messaging was, this has happened, that's it. There's no two ways about it. Whereas at the beginning of this, there was sort of like this isn't happening. What are you, you're an idiot if you think this is a problem. It'll be gone in a, So obviously there's deep-rooted problems with the way we communicate in this country, or, in the world perhaps, but especially in this country, just the communication and the lack of respect for other people, and social media is a poison, and and then that's his biggest weapon. So yeah, I mean, but I feel like for something like this that's killing people and causing at the beginning, like such a stress on the healthcare system and the economy and all this, for the guy at the top, at least, who has the ear of a little less than half of us, for him to be lying and talking shit like that is just I feel like that's one of the bigger problems that we've seen.
Are you involved at all with anything with the election? I know, back for the last election, when you were still in the Chili Peppers played like a Bernie Sanders rally, and, have always been that you in and out of the band have been politically active. Have you been involved with any kind of like live streams or benefits or, any kind of activism in general?
I would absolutely if I was asked. I don't know if I have a big enough name to really move the conversation, but
you do.
I've been donating a lot. I've been throwing money where I can. If in that moment when you get the email, you're like, oh,
yeah, they call it rage donation.
Yeah, well, you never know how much of a difference you're actually making. But Lyndsey Graham does need to go. So when that email comes in, I'm there. Like I've been donating where I can, but I reached out to a guy who was involved with that Bernie Sanders show, and because he's that's what he does. He's an activist, and I asked what he was up to, and he was doing this really interesting project with artists, but I haven't figured out how to get involved in that myself. I don't see where my way in there is, but so I feel like I've not been as involved as I would like to be. I had the crazy notion the other day. I saw on MSNBC, I saw a really cool state representative from Pennsylvania. I saw him a couple of days in a row, and he was very inspiring, and I thought, I should go be a poll worker in Pennsylvania. So maybe I'll do that.
So how is all this crazy shit that's going down in the world in general, since you've made this record kind of in real time while it's been going on? Like, did you write about any of this stuff? Like, is any of the lyrics inspired by, is this a topical record, would you say?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, in my usual abstract lyrical style, it'd probably be hard to pick out as many references to what's going on as I know there are, but yeah, certainly there are a few. I mean, I usually work on a smaller level, internal level, and then try and blow them up a little bit to fit a larger scale. But yeah, there are for sure.
Any particular songs you want to single out, mention?
Well, in my mind, when I wrote the lyrics to the first song on the album is called Red Don't Feel, and I was feeling sad for the color red because of its association with, a certain swath of the population, and I hate it. I see it.
It's a good color.
And it is a good color, and the poor color didn't do anything to deserve that, but
I got red nail polish on right now. I'm into the red. Yeah, that's funny.
I've got a red cup. I've got, but but there is an aspect to what that color stands for politically that makes me want to throw up. But I guess, on a more specifically, that, I think about those words as, their meaning and what people ascribe to a certain thing, belief system, set of words, whatever. It's not necessarily what it is, everything can probably be dialed back a little bit, and inroads can be made and conversations can be had, and it's not as dire as it may seem if people just sort of take time to calm down.
Yeah, well, that would be a good idea. I'd encourage that. I'm curious if anything, since this Plural One album, like I said, this is the second one, and the last one, when you came into the studio to talk about it, it was not that long after you'd left the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but that album had been completed while you were still in the band, correct? So this is the first album, Plural One album, you're making since leaving the band. So how did that experience, because that was obviously it's old news now. It was 10 months ago or so, but it was like a big whirlwind and a big change for you at that time. Like, how did that inform this record?
Probably, just in the sense that temporally and my schedule last time, that was one of the main reasons that I wasn't able to finish the album in one go. The band started working again, and I would do one bit of work and then stop and then go back to it. This time, just because my schedule was wide open, I was able to devote all my attention to it. So I think in that way, it sounds more focused. It sounds more cohesive. I really do feel, because I remember saying a lot, I probably said it to you on the show, that had I made the first album having not been in the band, I don't even know what that would have felt like if I was suddenly out of the band and I thought, oh God, I got to make an album, and feeling like there was some sort of pressure to be or do something. So I remember thinking that at the time, but this second album wasn't made with any of those thoughts from what I can remember. The only thing I was obsessed with, and still am, and I'm happy with, is that I've always wanted to be in a situation, be it a band or have a project that puts an album out or puts music out on a steady basis once a year, like they used to in the past, and the Chili Peppers don't work like that.
Not at all. Like, how many albums were you on of them? 2?
Yeah.
2. And you were in the band for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a rapid pace at all. Not
a rapid pace. No, and I write a lot of stuff, and I like I've said, I have lots of coffees to go get. If I'm kind of distracted, or if I'm allowed to, I will go do other things, because ultimately when I was in that band, that was a focus, and I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing if I was writing ideas for them, and kind of focusing on that music. If I wrote songs or finished or not finished, that was kind of over there. So this, now that I had time to finish and focus and work and write, that I feel like is present in these songs.
Did that frustrate you back when you were in the Chili Peppers, that you guys were touring all the time, but that the fact that you didn't release a lot of new music on a regular basis,
Oh yeah, it absolutely did. But it's how the machine works. I guess it's how it all works. I can't. There's no one person or thing to point at as to why more music wasn't worked on or more songs were written. But yeah, absolutely. It always was baffling to me that a band that has every ability or the means to be making tons of music and creating all the time, which we did. The amount of songs we worked on or wrote, was enormous. So it's just, I guess, just the way the machine works. I guess you only do it when you do it, and you only do a certain amount or whatever. I don't know. That's just the way so it certainly was frustrating to me at times that we weren't producing more.
I'm curious. So, as you know, and a lot of people listening know, the original co-host of Volume West with me was your buddy Chad Smith, my buddy as well. He just slid into my DMs the other day and sent me a video of Bang Tango I mean, there's an inside joke of Bang Tango and him, but he just likes, I'm like, he knows how to do DMs, on Instagram. He just randomly sent me a Bang Tango video from like some Instagram account called like Sleaze Rockers, which I'm now following. And so that's my communication with him. But he hosted the show for almost a year with me. And then he left to, ostensibly focus on the Red Hot Chili Peppers, because at that time he was going into that place in Agora or Calabasas or wherever you are in the West Valley to like do what you guys do, which is like shedding or whatever, like jamming or whatever. And then, obviously they still haven't put a record out, and then you left the band. But I've read that the first single off this Plural One record, The Night Won't Scare Me, is sort of like a finished idea of a riff or a chord progression, whatever you had back when you were still in the band. So I'm curious, like, how much of this album, I Don't Feel Well, is sort of like ideas that you had floating around that you weren't able to, apply back when you were in the band, and now you're taking them and fleshing them out for this project?
Two very clear ones that I remember were absolutely both of them were brought into the room with them and played once or twice. Or that one that you just mentioned was actually worked on a little bit more, but it was sort of done. That's perhaps one of my main problems with them. I sort of I tried to not do this, but it's hard for me to come up with an idea and not come up with the rest of the idea. And if I have a verse part, I usually have a chorus part, and then most likely when where do you go from there? Maybe a bridge, and then I usually finish the whole song to a degree. And I think when you're in a collaborative situation like that, especially with three other people that are enormously energetic and creative, it's probably probably just doesn't serve the whole as well, but it's just hard for me. It doesn't make sense to me to come in and say, here's a thing, and it's not done. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's what the improvisation and the jamming is for. You do that. I mean, if you're going to write a song, I feel like it helps direct. But I feel like also it's a double-edged sword. I feel like it's good to write like that. It's good to be focused and have a clear idea. But if you're in a band, sometimes that might lead to stagnation in the idea, because it doesn't allow for other people to do like that one in particular. I wrote those chords. I had a drum pattern. Chad's always great with playing something you suggest, or if you write, and he's amazing at doing it. And he always he feels exactly how I felt when I came up with the idea. But yeah, there's another song on the album called The Report, which was an idea that I brought into them, and it was worked on once. Anthony sang really amazing stuff over it instantly, and it just never got worked on again. And for whatever reason, I usually thought about I usually looked at the calendar, and so many songs, so many ideas fell victim to the fact that there was. They were shown on a Thursday, and then we might not work again until Tuesday. And so whatever excitement about it was there a few days ago, it's hard to, get that back. And then, maybe someone doesn't come because for whatever reason, then that idea, then we're working on other stuff. And then that idea is, 3 weeks down the road, you're like, hey, remember that thing? And it's just, then we have to leave town for a week, and then, but the next thing you know, it's been 2 months, and I'm digging in my little recorder and like, hey guys, remember this? And then, so, that's just the way it works. Again, I say again, but at a certain point, sometimes these songs that I, we wrote so many little ideas that I'm sad for. But I'm sure they're working and coming up with a lot of great stuff now, and I'm happy that they are. I can't remember exactly when they started working, but they've been, apart from the initial shutdown, they've been hard at work.
Okay, how long before you left the band back in? I guess it was sort of like. It was a while ago. I guess it was 2019, like January 2009. How much time did you spend working with them on what was going to be their next record before you left. And was any of that stuff recorded? Is there any chance any of those, the more fleshed out ideas from those jam sessions could like see the light of day, either billed as Red Hot Chili Peppers or billed as a, Plural One?
Well, I think we formally began working on what was to be the third album I was doing with them in late September, October of 2018.
Oh, wow.
Because I remember, I'm fairly sure that there was that Woolsey fire.
Yes.
And that was 2018. And I remember I was actually in Seattle with Chad. We were playing an event with Mike McCready and watching the fire progress on the phone like this because, like my two favorite guitars were at that house, like all of our stuff. Somehow the fire decided to skip our house that we were working in, and thankfully. But so we worked all throughout. And I think that was 2018. I had started the first Plural One album right before that. Then we went back to work. Then the first time we took a break, I think around spring vacation time, when their kids were off, I went back and started working on it again. So, we worked all throughout 2018. Did we do a couple live things? Yeah, then we went to South America around my birthday in 19. Yeah, and then the last thing I did with them was at the benefit for the Silver Lake Conservatory that Eddie Vedder, and that was on November 2nd. And then I left the band on December 15th
of last year.
Yeah, so it was sort of like a full year. And we went in and we demoed a couple of the things we were working on, but they were never finished. Anthony, the vocals, we were just throwing down the music and giving them to him, and then just the way that going out of town to do some live stuff. And then, Flea got married. There was a lot of time off at the end of that last year. So those recordings never got finished. So nothing like that will ever see the light of day. And I highly doubt they'll work on any of the stuff that we worked on as a group. Perhaps if it was something of Flea's. And then for me, I only feel good about working on an idea that I brought into them if it has nothing to do with, like Anthony sang some stuff over the chords for the report, but it didn't inform what I had in my mind. And then I already had a melody in my mind for The Night Won't Scare Me. So but there are other ones that I brought into them that cannot exist without what Anthony was doing.
Right. That makes sense.
Or Chad was doing. So, I would never, it's just kind of an internal emotional thing. The Night Won't Scare Me song, I just threw it out into the room one day because, I for whatever reason, I think Flea and I were kind of going back and forth on the piano, playing stuff for each other or whatever, like the piano was the focus of that day. And I thought, here's something. And, it can be such a fertile environment in there with them. If something catches fire, it can go. And it did that day. And it was, that one, was fun and it kind of came together pretty quickly. But, emotionally for me, there's only a few I could ever see existing without what happened there. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I understand that. I remember back when Chad was on the show and he was preparing to take what ended up being a very long hiatus from Volume West, but he's welcome back anytime, the prodigal son. But when, and he has actually been on the show a couple of times since then, but when he was preparing to take a kind of indefinite leave and he was explaining how the Chili Peppers worked, I was kind of surprised how jammy it was. I'm not a musician, so I'm not using the right lingo, but the fact that, I don't know how many bands even still work that way where it's like, you just go into a room and jam. It's very, especially these days where people are working more virtually, even before the pandemic and stuff, people were, sending each other tracks and not being, is that the way, because you were in, many other bands before you were in the Chili Peppers, was that a way you were used to working? Is that a way you prefer to work, or was that unique to that situation?
No, it's sort of unique to that situation nowadays. Like you just said, the computer and file sharing and that is so much more prevalent now. But I was lucky enough to catch perhaps the tail end of a bygone era and then obviously because I used to play with Bob Forrest, or, I was around the Chili Peppers from an early age, the bands I liked all came from, all you had basically was playing in a room with each other. So luckily, I sort of was like this with the past, and I never really embraced some of the more modern ways of writing songs or sharing what people do now. Obviously I don't have anything against any method anyone creates anything. It's great. But yeah.
Kind of the way we have to do it right now, or the way a lot of people have to do it right now. So. Yeah.
And so coming up, I feel like that's the reason that at least, that band and many of the bands that I love and from that era, that's all you playing in a room, someone writes a song and you got to make it come to life with the guys or gals you're playing with, and it happens in a room, and it happens organically, and that's a thing. And yeah, luckily I was able to really experience that, and it really feels like how it happens to me. I and same with recording. I'm kind of stubborn when it comes to that. I don't really know how to use the computers for recording very well. So, I still try and create something more organically like I grew up doing, and again, I never forget how lucky I am to have had those experiences.
Well, Josh, I really want to get into talking a lot more about those experiences, but we do need to take a quick break, so everybody hang tight. We'll be right back with Josh Klinghoffer and more Volume West from Home.
Beside the ocean. Live from SiriusXM Studios in Los Angeles, California, this is Volume West with your host, Yahoo Music Editor, Lyndsey Parker.
Welcome back to Volume West from Home. I am once again joined by Josh Klinghoffer. Josh, we were talking about all the experiences you've had in the music business since you were pretty much a zygote. You are a real lifer musician. Of course, a lot of people know you from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and we talked about that. We talked about your current project, Plural One, and the new album that came out today, I Don't Feel Well. But way before that, when you were quite literally in high school, you were in Bob Forrest's band, The Bicycle Thief. I'm pretty sure that was your first band. Just did like a reissue, right? Like I saw the unboxing on YouTube. You were involved. It was very exciting. So and I know Thelonious Monster are reuniting and doing like their first album in a really long time. I don't know if you're involved with that, but let's talk a little bit about The Bicycle Thief. Like what was the impetus for doing this reissue? For people listening outside of LA who don't know, The Bicycle Thief were Bob Forrest from Thelonious Monster's band after Thelonious Monster, and were very, very big here in LA locally. And you were like 15 and in that band, right?
17.
17, okay.
17, yeah.
Still very young.
Yeah, that was, out of the blue, that album, the Bicycle Thief album, of which there's only one, it was a special times, and for Bob and I, for different reasons. We were at different places in our lives, but I think his writing, as it always is, really true and honest and natural. And there was something that we achieved there, or specifically that he achieved, and it connected to people like he always tends to do. And that record, obviously John Frusciante plays a solo on one of the songs with me. We did it together sort of right when I met him. That kind of helped a lot of other people at the time become aware of the album. But, the album has had a little bit of a life for 21 years now, and is important to people because those songs and those words that Bob wrote are really meaningful. And it made an impression on a wonderful guy called Chris when he was younger. And I feel like I could probably, I don't know all the details, but he works at a label, or he has a label, and he just decided one day that he wanted to put it back out and bring it to life. And he did that. When I first got a text about it, I thought it was a joke. I thought Bob was kidding. And cut to if I wish it'd probably take me a little too long to go run and get it. But I mean, he just produced a beautiful vinyl reissue of it. I mean, it's the original artwork, because that album had a funny story where it was released by Paul at Golden Voice. Golden Voice had a label. Yeah, and he had a label for a little while, and obviously through his relationship with Bob, and he was someone he wanted to work with, and he put out this album for us. But I remember we played the first Coachella, so Coachella happened, and just the company, there was a lot going on at that time. So the label became a little bit of an afterthought, and the band just sort of fizzled out. But then we had it reissued a year later by another label with different artwork and a couple new songs. And it was so funny to me at the time. It's like, wow, this little album that very few people care about is getting a second chance, and now it's getting a third chance.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough how beautiful of the job Chris did. And I would love to say his last name, but I won't pronounce it right, because it's one of those names that I looked at and I just have never focused. I don't want to get it wrong. So Chris, I apologize for that, but you really did a stellar, stunning job with that record.
Yes, as you did with your second Plural One album, which is out today, Friday the 16th. And I know that you have some collaborators on it. Before I let you go back to that album, like I said, is out today. So I don't think Bob Forrest is on it, but I know on the last Plural One record, you had Flea on it. You had Steve McDonald, because you used to play in Red Cross too, right? For a minute.
Did I ever? I guitar tech for Red Cross.
That counts. Red Cross are like gods to me, so that impresses that in itself. But who's on this? I had thought you did everything alone at home, but now that I know that you went to a studio and played with people, who's on this new record?
Well, this one is less guests than the last one. This one is really just me, apart from Jack Irons again, as he did on the first one. He provides the drums for a couple of songs. And that was, we did that remotely. He recorded them at home, and then I only had a limited amount of time. So it was amazing that it actually worked out. So I didn't actually record in the room with other musicians this time. Jack provided some drums that he did at home. Steve McDonald played a little bass from his home, and that's it. Apart from that, It's just me. And then we have I have some beautiful string arrangements on there that were written by Nate Walcott, who plays with Bright Eyes, who's also been doing a lot of pandemic. They put out a record. He was on tour with the Chili Peppers with me for so long in the last couple of years, so he and I have a good musical relationship. But yeah, the beautiful string players, Jack Irons and Steve McDonald. That's it. That's a super group. That's enough. Yeah. Well, no, it was never together at the same time. But yeah, it was I liked the idea of having there be limitations on this one. So I was actually surprised with how well the drums came out, sonically, and how easy it was to work with them. But yeah, I was fully prepared to let the moment seep into this album, and I don't know if anyone will hear that, as the calendar pages turn. I don't know if it'll ever sound like it came from a particularly stressful time. The string players all played separately, and we put them together. That's how it's getting done these days. But yeah, to me, it definitely feels like an album of this time, but hopefully it'll be timeless, and hopefully it makes people feel good. It's a great record. It's called I Don't Feel Well by Plural One, a.k.a. Josh Klinghoffer. It's out today. Thank you so much for joining me again. Hopefully next time we'll be in person. You're welcome on anytime. I'm so glad to hear that you're doing well and staying creative and busy. I will be back next Monday with my co-host Davey Havoc and RuPaul's Drag Race star Peppermint. See you then.